We're ready to start step 1 of making the relaxed raglan. If you are adding the triangle patch or the elbow patches, you will need to have completed those steps prior to starting with step 1. They are 2 processes that have to be done before you start putting all of the pieces together. To begin with step 1, you're going to need to have out your front and back pieces and your 2 sleeves. So I'm going to take my front piece. This is the one I'm going to look for on the tape marking. It says it's on the wrong side, but it's labeled front. So I need that piece first. I'm going to open it up, and I want it to be right side up. So I'm going to find that. That's the wrong side. I'm going to flip that over. I want my shirt to be right side up. We're going to be sewing one of the sleeves on to the front, and we'll be sewing it with right sides together. So I've got the piece laying out. I'm going to grab one of the sleeves, open it up. Again, I want my right sides together, so the side that has the wrong side, that's going to be out. I'm going to be able to see that blue. So the next thing I need to do is I need to look for my small triangle. So one side of my sleeve is going to have a small triangle, and one is going to have one of these larger flat top or double notches. So I'm going to find the side that has the single notch and match it up on the side of the front of the shirt that also has a single notch. Really the only part of the shirt we are looking at is right here. Okay, so what you will want to do is you'll want to place pins going along this edge just to pin this one area in place. We're not going to pin any other part of the shirt at this time. Double check to make sure your pins look similar to my pins. They should be perpendicular to the edge so that as you are sewing you can pull them out easily by pulling on the pin head as you approach it with your needle on the sewing machine. The instructions tell you to have a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn my machine to a 2 where that centers the needle, and then I will be able to follow the 5/8 line over here in order to get a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm going to increase my stitch length to a 4, so it is similar to a basting stitch. We're going to end up serging over this, so this is just a stitch that's going to hold my 2 pieces in place until it is serged. I'm going to start at one end. I'm going to go ahead and start with my needle down. Again, I'm using this 5/8 line as my guideline. Needle down, presser foot down. I'm going to stitch forward a few stitches. I'm going to reverse back to the end. And then I'm going to stitch along, again following the whole time, watching this 5/8 line along the side and making sure that my fabric is lined up with. At this point in the process, you'll be ready to start serging the edge that you have just sewn with your machine. I would suggest having tested your fabric using one of your scraps just to make sure the tension on the serger is the way that you need it to be for your weight of fabric. Since all the students in class are using various weights, they may need to adjust the tension slightly or tighten the loops. So those are adjusted using these knobs right here. And again, you will have practiced this before actually serging on your shirt. Just to show you where you need to look on the presser foot, there are 2 grooves, and you are going to be looking at the little groove that's on the left-hand side. So you'll line your stitch that you just made on the sewing machine, you'll line it up straight and even with this line. Then your blade will cut off the appropriate amount and serge the edge for you. When starting to serge, there should be no reason that you have to lift the presser foot. Sometimes if your fabric is a little bit slipperier, you might have to lift up the presser foot and slide your seam all the way back in there. But usually I just start with my presser foot down and start from the very end. What you do have to really be mindful of when you are serging is making sure that the only thing you are stitching through is the 2 layers that are out here, and that none of the fabric that you are using for the shirt is actually getting caught in there, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Just put my foot, and I do actually need to lift the presser foot here. It's not wanting to go under. Get that in there. Okay. So I kind of just help it through. I'm watching the notch right there in my presser foot, keeping that lined up. And I'm also feeling over here to make sure this is flat and smooth and not getting tucked under. If any of your fabric from the shirt part gets tucked under there while you're sewing, you will end up cutting a hole in your shirt. Okay, now when you are serging like you've practiced, you're just going to continue going until you can pull out a long tail, and then you'll be able to just clip the tail off. When you're trimming the end to cut your serger thread loose, you want to trim here so that you leave a long tail, and that way you have this tail that you can tie in a knot later if needed. So what we've done up to this point, we've had right sides together and we have sewn on one sleeve to the front of the shirt. So I'm just going to open it up just to make sure that everything looks good. So you'll want to do the same. Open your sleeve, and what you're looking at is right across here. There's no holes, there's no gaps in stitching, no wrinkles or crinkles. Okay, so that is the first sleeve attached to the front. What you need to do next is you need to attach the other sleeve to the front. So I'm going again with right sides together, and again I'm looking at this sleeve at the single triangle up here, and I'm going to match it up with my triangle on the gray shirt, and then I'll want to pin across there. Next, you will repeat the process of stitching a 1/2 inch seam allowance using a large 4 stitch length right across here. Also, just as you had done on the other seam, you have done your 1/2 inch seam allowance right here. Now you're going to go back and line the seam or the stitching up with the line on your presser foot on the serger, and you'll serge the edge of this seam right here. The next part of the process, you're going to need your back piece. So once again, we're going to be sewing sleeves to the back piece with right sides together. So I've got the top of my shirt here, and now I have it where you'll see it. It is wrong side facing up. I'm going to open up my sleeve here on one side. Okay. And then I'm going to have that back piece, and I'm going to match up those flat top notches. So right now what I have, I've got the right side in here, so my wrong side is up. I've got my cardinals print, that's the right side up, so I've got right sides together with the flat top notch matched up right here. And then I'm going to pin along there. Now, just as you have previously done on the front side of the shirt on the sleeves, you will stitch a 1/2 inch seam allowance going across here using a 4 stitch length, and then you will serge the edge. At this point, all of your pieces are attached. So I've just finished up. This was the last seam that we looked at right here. This was attaching the back of the shirt to the sleeve. So right now we've just got one big piece, okay? So we're getting there. We still have one more seam to finish off the shoulder. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to, again, sew right sides together. I'm gonna take this back piece and I'm going to take this sleeve piece, and again, I'm going to match up the notches. So what we will have is the piece will then be connected right here, and it's gonna make one big connected ring, and this will be where the shoulders are, neck hole, all of that will be created with sewing up this seam right here. So we will repeat the same process, pinning, sewing a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then serging the edge. After serging that last edge, here is what you should have. It now is somewhat resembling a neckline with 2 sleeves. So we have this area, this is with the front side up, so it's still wrong side out, but it's got the front on top. So my neck is right here, and then my sleeves over here. So you can definitely at this point tell that this is going to end up looking like a raglan style shirt.